So here we are with another brainstorm activity. This one looks very similar, kind of with these boxes and separating some things out, but the topics are going to be a little bit different. So again, you're going to want to draw this box just like I have here. And the first column is going to be comments, the middle one's responses, and the third one kind of these emotions. As narrative writers, one of our goals is to elicit a response from our readership, whether that means they're ecstatic with us and it's funny and they're thrilled, whether that means they're sad with us or they're frustrated or perhaps they're shame, just like in what Dick Gregory writes in his narrative. So there's all of these kind of emotions, and emotions are going to be crucial for our stories to be successful. So here I have in comments, and I always tell students that as you think about this type of writing, you want to think about those moments that kind of haunt you, those things that you hear, good or bad, that kind of repeat from when you were 8, when you were 18, when you were 28. Maybe some of you aren't 28 yet. But these kind of haunting memories of what people have said. And even if, you have these conversations with the people and they're like, I never said that, you can still vividly hear their voice in your ear. So I always give students a little bit of a warning. Mine are kind of sad. I am not necessarily a sad person, but I definitely write through my feelings. And so oftentimes mine are a little heavy. So just know that kind of going into this. So I start out with, let's start out with my third one, actually. I should move it up to the top. So this one, because this is the one I think I'm going to write about. It says, and all 5 of them are dead. And this is Pastor Reed saying it to me. In this moment, as I have told you in the previous video, my mom remarried when I was 14. And one of the reasons why she remarried is because my dad and brother died in a car accident when I was 10. I remember this, of course, vividly, not just their death, but also how I found out about it. My sister and I had been away at a camp about 6 hours away, and we drove buses home. And my mom was going to meet us there, and my dad and Jacob, my brother, were supposed to meet us there as well. And I remember getting off the bus, and my mom was there, and like people were handing her food and like kind of hugging her. And I thought it was odd because I was really expecting my whole family to be there. And, I get off the bus and give her a big hug. It'd been a week till I seen her, and she was kind of crying, and I was 10 years old. And I remember saying like, what's wrong? What's going on? She's like, don't worry about it. Just get in the van. So my sister and I got into the van with some other people, and my mom, and my pastor was in the front seat. And I remember I was in the second seat, him like leaning back and like looking back to the van, and him being already like tears in his eyes and saying, remember when we prayed for the safety of Juan, who is my dad, and the boys when they went on this mission trip? He said, well, they got hit with a truck head on, and all 5 of them are dead. And I can still hear kind of those haunting words and not quite comprehending even what that meant. My reaction was kind of that disbelief, confusion, like loss. I remember I had contacts when I was 10, and I cried so hard that I cried my contacts kind of out of my eyes. This was kind of a pivotal point in my life. And if you've ever had any sort of trauma, there's kind of like a before the trauma and after the trauma. And so for me, my childhood goes up to kind of this moment when I was 10, and then kind of switches to this more adolescent thought process. It also was the moment where I really had to think through what I believed in my religion, what I believed about God, what I believed about the world, and kind of my worldview through that. So you'll see some of that in my writing. I know this is a heavy topic, but I feel like so often we don't talk about heavy topics, and I want you to know that you can here. This is a place where you can talk about things like this, because I think it is healing when we do talk about these things, when we can reflect and look back and go, that moment was extremely difficult, but that moment also has made me who I am. And a lot of these other ones afterwards are kind of a repercussion of that, because I think my life was kind of defined by this moment. So this next one is that following year. This is Betsy, who's my best friend's mom, who I love dearly. Sometimes people seem like they are the nemesis in my story, but they are not bad people. We're at the 6th grade dance here. And I was in the bathroom crying because it was the father-daughter dance. And my dad, of course, had just died about a year and a half ago. And Betsy came in, she was trying to comfort me. She was like knocking on the door and she was like, Rebecca, like Nicole's out there and her dad's not here either. And I just remember being so angry and frustrated because Nicole's dad was in a different state. He was in Iowa. He wasn't dead. They had been divorced. Um, and I just was so angry about it. And I didn't know anything. And I was a kid and she was a parent. And I just remember crying and she just kind of left. Now, again, as an adult, do I think she should have said it? Probably not, but she was trying to help. But now I think through like Nicole's relationship with her dad and her dad not being there by choice versus my dad being gone by death. I don't, I don't know which, I don't want to even say one is better than the other because sometimes we play this game of like who has a worse life and which one. And I don't think that's helpful to anyone in that situation. I think I should have maybe been more empathetic. But of course, at 11 years old in that moment, I was not. So again, just kind of a moment I could reflect on and see how in the moment as a child I reacted and maybe how I would react now. This one is from my Aunt Rebecca, who did not get along with. After the accident, my dad's family and my mom did not get along. We still kind of have some issues with my dad's family. I'm not even sure exactly why to this moment. Perhaps like your family, we don't always talk about every single thing. But I remember being in my grandma Ramirez's dining room and I had 9 aunts and uncles on that side. And every like Friday night, we would kind of all go to the house, as we would call it, and we'd eat and we'd just like gather around this table that was meant for like 8 people. My grandpa was a legit hoarder, so there would be like newspapers and 8-track tapes, and my grandma would be cooking these like fried pork chops and rice and sopa, and she would have tortillas out, and we would just kind of like sit around and eat kind of in waves. And there was never enough room, and so my mom was like on the corner of this here, and my aunt like was trying to walk past her, like shimmy through, and I remember her like pushing my mom's chair and being like, you're kind of in the way here, just snotty. I know as an adult that my aunts are just snotty. Like there's 5 sisters and they're always crabbing at each other and stuff. But to me, I felt like that was a bigger piece. Like they did not want my mom around anymore. And I didn't say anything because I was like an 11-year-old kid, but I remember being really angry. I would say I'm still angry at the way that I feel like they treated my mom. And sometimes the way they treat my mom. So there's some fallout there as well. And family is just so difficult to navigate. I feel like we could all write about situations in our family where things are not how they should be or how we think that they are. I also have this other moment. It's not really related, but my mom, love her dearly. I talk to her almost every day still. She lives, of course, in Chicago still, and I live out here. But my mom has some major eating issues and really tried to pass them on to me. I feel like I'm in a good spot now that I'm almost 40 and know how to manage them. But as a kid, it was really difficult because my mom always told me things like, you're big, right? You're the big one. Because my mom is so petite, my sister is so petite. And so we were at Target and I was an adult by then. I had graduated college. I hadn't had kids yet, but I tried on this dress and my mom says, oh, you can't wear that. You're thick like me. I'm not particularly thick, but just hearing that, I was like irate. I was like, no, I'm not. I could wear that. And granted, no, it didn't look that great on me, but like, why does that have to define what I wear? Maybe I want to wear what I want to wear, and I don't care necessarily if it makes me look 10 pounds heavier. I remember being embarrassed. Like my mom knows now not to comment on my weight because she's always like, oh, did you lose weight? Or like, oh, it looks like you've gained a few pounds. I'm not defined by my weight. I'm not defined by who I am. I've had 3 kids. And she would always talk about up or down or this or that. She still wants to lose 5 pounds and she's, 68, and I don't know why it matters. So that's something I think could write about, especially now that I have 3 girls. I'm very conscious of what I talk about in regards to our bodies and our weights. And then the last one is just more of like not a funny story, but like an embarrassment story. I was young. I was in high school. I had a friend of me, maybe. There were twins, Jessica and Aaron, and I was friends with Jessica, but Aaron was always there because we were twins. They were twins, and we were at a party, and I remember having drank too much, especially when you're in that like phase of like adolescent drinking and you don't know your boundaries. And I remember saying like, you're cool, F you, right to Erin, like right to her face and like just like pointing her out. And I remember like in the moment, like stepping outside of myself and be like, why are you doing this? Don't do that. But I didn't, like in the moment. And this is very much, I think, indicative of my personality. Like in the moment, I'm like, nope, I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to apologize. I was right, blah, blah, blah. And then like the next day, I think that happened on a Friday night. Cause I remember like the whole weekend just being like dreading Monday at school where like everyone would know there would be this big thing. And I remember just the shame of acting that way and being so mean. Because even if I don't like someone, like I'm not here to make someone's life miserable. And I just felt like I was so mean to her in public. So I called and I apologized. And she was super forgiving. I actually talked to her about it as an adult. We went out for dinner. She lives on the West Coast here. And I remember bringing it up and she's like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember. And I'm like, oh, I'm still embarrassed over it. So these are some of my writings. Down here, you might want to think about too, you might want to have a variety. As I said in the beginning, right, there's kind of these perpetrators, the people who make the comments that like make you feel terrible. But sometimes like we are the perpetrators. Sometimes we are the one making comments and are ashamed of it afterwards. So I think part of memoir and narrative writing is really honesty, being real with yourself and with your readership. And I think in those moments we are most human to say, I did this, it was wrong, and I wish I hadn't, but this is how I grew from it. I can also be witness comments like with my mom, where I saw something happening. What was my reaction? Hopefully as an adult, I more am willing to speak out than as a child in that moment. And then of course the victim comments where I am the victim and I am hearing these things. So I try to have a little bit of a variety. If you don't, you don't. And then of course you're going to do a free write again. This is my free write. You can see I didn't even check my spelling here. It's pretty messy and that's okay. I wrote for about 7 minutes and that's what I would encourage you to do. And then you can see part 2, we'll revise it. Don't worry about it that week, but at least you kind of know where I'm going with it. So hopefully you will have some good ideas here in getting your brain ready to share some stories. And I look forward to hearing more about your life.